would say, I would give kind of one example. So I just moved here, and I moved here for a variety of reasons. I guess you could say some of them are macroeconomic, about the opportunities that I see here and the environment that I see here. And like I was talking about with some of the panelists before, it's, anywhere that you start a company, there are going to be problems. And it's just a question of what problems do you want to have, because there's problems everywhere. So like early on at DripTech, we knew that the most small plot farmers were in China and India. And we did some business development in both China and India. Very different countries in terms of how they operate in terms of agriculture. And actually our first big deal was with a local government in China. We got connected through an investor, and we went and, shook hands and had a bunch of meals and did this deal, and we rolled out drip irrigation for 200 farmers in this rural China. And it was super easy. The government wanted to do it, and it happened, and we got paid, and everything was good. And at the same time, we were looking and seeing, okay, well, we were building partnerships, we were doing distribution, we were setting up dealers in India, and we were doing kind of like a lot more legwork to get to the end customers. But ultimately, we decided to leave China and really focus on India because of the business model basically in China is working with the government, and the government is very effective. And in India, it's selling to the farmer because, all of those channels actually to reach the farmer exist in spite of government failings. And you can do marketing, and farmers are actually used to buying things themselves, like in India, whereas in China, you could talk to farmers all day long, and they weren't going to buy anything. They would wait for their local government to procure it and then, give it to them for free. So, there's a successful business selling drip irrigation to small governments in China, but that wasn't the business that I wanted to build. The predictability and the business development cycle of that wasn't interesting to me. So ultimately, when you look at a country like Nigeria and a city like Lagos, there are a lot of customers, and they have a lot of problems, and there are a lot of opportunities to create value. And if you can create enough value for those customers and convince them to share some of that value with you, that's where you get a successful business. And for me, that's a relationship that I understand of products and end customers. And I just try to avoid the government.
Okay, so we'll take one more question.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My questions, first and foremost, is to Fahim. About a month ago, it was in the news that, are you with me? About a month ago, it was the news that Gokada went off the roads. Okay, yeah, at some point. So everybody was wondering what went wrong with you guys.
Shut down. Yeah.
So please, we want you to share that experience with us. I want to know that. Then again, for Damilola, you guys, EchoVC, you've been around for a while because I've had one or two interactions with you guys. My question is, what are your major criteria right now for investments? What's your investment cap? And in what sectors do you actually invest? That's for you. Then again, for the general panel. But again, Shola, I need you to answer this. How do you value a pre-revenue fintech startup? Okay, because one of the major problems you have as a startup in this environment, especially if you're doing tech, is a violation. You're going to deal with investors every day who want to, I don't want to use the word cheat, who want to possibly rip you off, okay? And you have to come up with a valuation that's actually reasonable for both parties to be able to understand. So please, for everybody in the panel, please, can you just tell us some things about how you value a pre-revenue startup, as a matter of fact? Thank you.
You just come up with a number, literally. The whole valuation. Before I raised any capital, I thought this whole raising capital, valuations, blah 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 thing was very data-centric, scientific, high level. I didn't understand it yet. I need to get more education or more experience. but it's literally just some VC being interested in it, and then that VC has this enemy, another VC that's like, oh, I can't have you in it. Like things like that happen all the time, and it's a lot of it is emotional. FOMO, fear of missing out. I don't want to miss out on this deal that could become huge. If you have a lot of interested parties, then you're more likely to get a higher valuation because it looks like signaling, I guess. Signaling shows everybody else shows that they're interested in it. So they've kind of done some of the legwork for you to say, hey, this is something that's valuable. You should take a look at it. And sometimes that's enough for somebody to not even do proper due diligence and just put money in. It's so much more emotionally driven than I ever thought. You just have to figure out how to make yourself the hot girl in the room. Pardon my metaphor, but that's actually how it is. How can you make yourself, whether it's how you speak or how you present yourself or how much you network or the way you position your startup to make yourself look hot and have VCs vie for you. As far as the shutdown, right? The shutdown was something that actually I was thinking about for a long time. And actually, I wasn't going to call it a shutdown. I was going to call it Gokada 2.0. And I was thinking about it for a while because what I realized was we had, hundreds of drivers, and that's great. But a lot of these drivers, were not great. We didn't filter our drivers. We just had, hey, come on, join as a driver. We'll train you a little bit. And I'll be honest with you, this is, I took over as CEO. If many of you don't know, but prior. There was a lot of metrics that were being thrown out there that weren't necessarily true. And I was just like, okay, well, it's not a big deal. I mean, whatever. I mean, I'm not running the company, but I'm an investor regardless. But, it's like, I think this happens a lot, actually, where kind of metrics are just thrown out there and people don't actually have any real valid numbers behind it just because they wanted to make it look good. So we had something that said we only accept 5% of drivers. No, we accepted 80%, 70% of drivers at the time. And that was unfortunate, but and because of that, our drivers were not that great. They were breaking laws. They weren't as bad as something, but they were still, in my opinion, very, very bad. They were breaking laws. They were upcharging from fares. They were not using the app. They didn't know how to use Google Maps. A lot of these things I noticed for a long time, and I kind of just ignored it. But I'm like, I didn't feel right about that. I was like, I want to build a good business. So, we gave drivers a chance, and we told them, hey, you guys have to pick up your act. You have to get your metrics up. You have to stop breaking the law, blah, blah, blah. And we put a cutoff point. And if you didn't meet the mark at that cutoff point, we're going to give you your bike. We're going to paint it black. You're gone. All right? We're only going to keep the drivers that want to be at Gokada and want to adhere to our rules and want to actually provide a good experience. Because we're Gokada. Every driver that's out there represents our brand, right? And if one driver breaks the law, for that person, Gokada's a bunch of drivers that break laws. So I wanted to make sure, how can we have a service where every single driver we have, adheres to laws, drives, within the lanes and not against traffic, all these things, provides you helmet, is really well mannered, looks professional. How can we make sure that that's consistent? And in order to do that, we had to, unfortunately, remove the bad drivers because as we got new drivers, what we found was they were good in the beginning, but then they learned the bad behaviors of those drivers and they emulated it, right? So what we needed to do in order to grow was have a good set of drivers to start. So whenever we got new drivers, they emulated the good behaviors, and that just was a recursive cycle. And I was writing the blog post. I remember my designer was right behind me. I was writing Gokada 2.0, and I was writing the entire post. And I'm a big prankster. I don't know if many of you know, but one of my first companies out of college was a prank calling app called Prank Dial, and that made a bunch of money. And that's actually how I started everything else after that. But he was right behind me. I'm like, dude, what do you think about this? And I deleted Gokada. I deleted 2.0. I was like, Gokada is shutting down. because I thought it was funny because I was gonna put, hey, you're shutting down. We got so much competition. All this all this government stuff's happening. I can't handle it anymore. I'm out of here. By the way, I'm just joking. we're just stopping for a week and we're coming back. And I thought, in my thinking, there's perception and then there's the reality of things. And the perception of it would be, oh my God, Gokada's shutting down. Oh wow, like they couldn't do it. OPE, the name that would not be. OPE killed them, or the government was shutting them down, or whatever, or they couldn't get enough funding. So that's what I'd have to deal with for a week. Okay, it's not the biggest deal. In that week, we basically got rid of the bad drivers. We retrained all our drivers. We gave them all new gear, Bluetooth helmets, new shoes, new bikes. I don't know if you guys saw them, but they are phenomenal. Those bikes, they barely need repair. They're Indian bikes, and they're awesome. And we came back a week and a half later, and we got all this bad press. Gokada's shutting down. Gokada's shutting down. We got so much press. We didn't pay a dime for it. We didn't pay a dime. And what I realized very early on when I started Gokada was bad press isn't bad, right? It was, I want to be lean. Bad press came out. That's great. But then when we came out with all our bikes and all our new drivers and that good experience, everybody was looking at us. And again, we paid no money, right? People came to us, wrote these stories, and we didn't pay a dime. And now all of a sudden, I don't think it's fully gone yet because we don't have enough drivers on the road. But as you see more and more drivers get on the road, and the experience is just so much better than you would ever expect from a bike taxi, that whole Gokada shutdown thing is going to erase away. And I think it actually, in the long run, helped us really differentiate ourselves as the premium bike taxi brand compared to OPE or the others.
On fundraising, there's like Fahim said, it's really kind of whatever you can get people to compete over and agree on. But one thing that I've found kind of is maybe a useful way to think about it is that for an investor to come in, especially kind of institutional investor to come in to a kind of a round of funding, whatever that size of the round, they want a meaningful stake in the company, right? So, when you look at rounds of funding that get done, they all tend to be for something like 20 to 40% of the company, right? There's exceptions to this, of course, but like most early stage venture capital rounds are for something like 20 to 40% dilution, regardless of how much money is raised. So in some cases, it's better to just think about how much money can I raise for that amount of the company, and how far can that get me, rather than saying, okay, I need this much, I'm going to try to negotiate on this percentage, because, ultimately investors, they're going to come in, they want to have a meaningful stake in the business. So it's actually in some ways more easier to negotiate the amount of money that sort of like represents than the actual percentage. But overall, I think that actually people and the ecosystem puts way too much emphasis on fundraising and it almost becomes kind of like the end goal, and people talk about fundraising. It's all about fundraising and raising funds and actually I think that the companies that focus on raising talent and on creating value for their customers rarely have too much trouble raising funds. Ultimately funds are a tool to build a successful business that is built on team and on customer value. And that's a great segue to a plug for the talent workshop that I'm going to be leading later this week. So if you want to learn more about specifically about building high impact kind of startup teams, look at the schedule. I don't know, it's on Friday or maybe Thursday.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that. There's been a lot of businesses that have raised a lot of capital, like Uber, and all kinds of businesses that are losing a ton of money and have raised a bunch of capital. But you'll find that businesses that are able to do that successfully, and you hear about them, those are usually the outliers. You don't hear about all the businesses that raise a ton of capital and fail miserably. right? They just go away, and we only look at Uber and we look at all these other companies. You know, that is actually a strategy. A lot of investors, and I've seen this. They're like, let's just pump the valuation, let's just grow the numbers, blah blah blah. Let's just, you know, just keep growing. That's not, you know, it's not really sustainable in the long run. You have to build a real business, and I'd say that, you know, you could do that, and you can keep raising capital and growing the numbers and losing money, and keep raising capital, losing more money, and at some point you could sell your stake and you made a bunch of money. You know, that happens rarely, I'd say. Travis, for example, of Uber. But what always works is a real business. Never doesn't work. Always works. A business that's profitable always works. So, I mean, if you want the highest chance of success, build a real business and have really good unit economics that for every dollar you add, you make more than $1. And that always works. So, you know, just follow common sense. Do not go with the herd. Think for yourself. I thought I was going crazy when Batao, even though I made a good amount of money on it, was losing boatloads of money, millions a month, and it made I made more money on that company than I ever did from all the profitable companies I have in the past. And I actually got very lucky, honestly. I'll tell you honestly, I did. Because if we didn't have the right investor connections, if we didn't have the right appeal, if we weren't at the right place at the right time, it would have never happened, honestly. But, you know, I built all these other businesses in the past, apps. I built, you know, apps when I was in high school, apps when I was in college, prank calling app, $0 startup, maybe $100 from birthday money or something like that. But that app made $10 million in 10 years, right? It's possible. Just think differently, be lean, don't follow the herd, and you know, the internet's out there. Things are cheaper than ever to do. It really is possible.